Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mancini, the Amazing Channel, Champion Edition. I officially declare myself the Titan with a typewriter, and today I'm going to show you, on the back of winning my first ever VGC Draft League, first ever VGC Draft League win. I've obviously played a number of VGC Draft Leagues, and I've won in many other types of draft formats, but this is finally my first time getting the win in a regular VGC Draft League. I want to show you how my Pokemon win games. As you can see, I am the Titan with the typewriter in the sense of Pokemon types, and I'm going to take you on a curated trip through the Pokemon that I drafted, and show you a example games of how I used the coalescing of several offensive Pokemon types together to be able to win a number of games effectively. Unfortunately, this does mean I don't get the chance to spotlight the grass and poison types, despite having had several of both of them on my team, I think 3 of each, because they didn't really have matchups where I was able to build around getting the most value out of them, but I can say that they are still fun types that I did obviously draft a number of Pokemon from, and we'll be taking a look through those. So here, let's go to the first set of types. This is the Crashing Canyons. I drafted two premium within this low tier format ground types. That's the Piloswine and the Swampert. I think Swampert is very broadly recognized as an effective ground type, maybe a little bit less so within the context of VGC Draft. It does have some drawbacks there, but it still has a solid attack stat, a solid special attack stat, and access to high horsepower, earthquake, and earth power, all of which I did have the opportunity to run both physical and special Swampert variants. And then you have Piloswine, who, within the context of VGC Draft, is very much a dedicated physical attacker with high horsepower and earthquake, as well as ice flex moves, and does also possess the ability Oblivious, which means it is immune to Intimidate, and thus can keep up that physical offense damage very consistently. So let's take a look at how I crashed Canyons in the context of VGC Draft, and won a game using the consistency of my ground type moves. So here we have, I believe my week 5 match against Tactical Tom. In this matchup, I did bring both Piloswine and Swampert. I'm just going to be showcasing one game per, but this was a matchup where I looked at, and it did seem in general like ground moves were pretty effective, though this one is a bit of an oddity to the rest of the sets, where it's maybe not only my own ground type moves. So here we come to a team preview. We see I have Lead Swampert, and I do even have Terra Ground Victreebel, which I believe is running Terra Blast, though we'll see. Sorry, I did all this work to make this frame, which is hopefully easier to read. And we see that my opponent has only Terra Flying, as in the ability to beat ground moves, on a Pokemon that's already flying type. So I am pretty confident, especially after game 1, which I believe I did win, that I have solid opportunities to really break through this set using my own ground moves. And we see not only my own ground moves, oh no, sorry, that's next turn. I apologize. So I go for a bulk up here to be able to really juice up my Swampert. I am just spamming Volt Switch here, but my opponent is conveniently giving me a switch with the Raichu anyway, even after trying to protect it. And we see here, I do go for a Terra Ghost for fighting moves from the Hitmonlee, which are sort of their main way to deal damage, especially because I pin this Garganacl, and with Terra Water it's not going to be able to take 2 hits. But we see their own Earthquake combining with my own high horsepowers to make real progress into the set. And even in this game where they do have a ground type, both my ground types have secondary stabs. In this case, I got the Torrent boost due to the damage my opponent did to me, which boosted the power of my water type moves. But on the case of Piloswine, it does also have those super effective ice type moves into flying types, which means I am always able to put some pressure out using my different ground types in the set. So this one, Swampert, high horsepower, obviously Earthquake broke through Zebstrika. High horsepower was absolutely devastating for the Garganacl, and it did pressure the Hitmonlee, even if I did wind up getting the KO with Skuntank. So ground type, definitely a good type, and one that in a lower tier format like this season was, it can be harder for people to draft consistent checks to. Sorry, I hope the music in the background isn't... It did reset the volume. I'm actually going to make it slightly quieter. I hope it isn't overpowering for anyone. So yes, there's the crashing canyons. And then, following that, we have the mental melding. The power and consistency of Psychic-type Pokemon, in this case my Exeggutor and my Alolan Raichu. I wound up having, maybe having some games where the Psychic spam didn't work out quite as well. But within the season, like, this was one of the two categories where there were two really strong contenders. So I'm just going to show you the one that I wound up picking for this. But this is actually my playoffs game. Is this the right one? I am concerned that this is the wrong one. Sorry. It's not very professional of me. I'm going to just quickly take this off here. That is the wrong one. My apologies. Yep. My sincerest apologies for that. This is my, I believe, semi-finals game? Yeah, no, my quarterfinals game against Firefalls, which, as you may notice, has two fighting types, and their steel type is not a resist to psychic, so I do have the ability to really bust out with strong psychic type offense here. I apologize for getting a little bit ahead in terms of where we're supposed to be getting up to in this. So they go for an Intimidate here, and I have the Sun to be able to enable my Exeggutor. I really sort of use Sleep Powder here as a fake out. It just prevents my opponent from using their Scar Stantler effectively, and I'm able to get out damage for the rest of my team. Even at -1, I'm still able to outspeed the Blaziken here, and the Psychic just absolutely takes it out. We do sort of see the consistent damage coming out. Some decent damage from the Ninetales, but it does just go down. So it was able to remove that Stantler, which was not bulky at all, and it was able to get some chip into that into the Belly Bolt, but as you can see, the Belly Bolt is able just to sort of ignore the chip that it had taken. I confirmed there that it was safety goggles, and then at this point I'm like, okay, I can just start clicking Psychic type moves, and that's going to be my most consistent way to be able to break through this, using that strong, the combination of two Pokemon with decent Psychic special attacks and Psychic moves, and the Terra Psychic to really amplify that damage here. And through that I'm able to break down a set which, as you could see from it running Slack Off, was most likely designed to be able to check my Exeggutor with it having access to that Sleep Powder as well, and I believe it might even have been Terra Flying. Yeah, it was Terra Flying as well to resist the grass moves, so being able to put out that really consistent damage, as well as obviously the ground moves from the previous set. Being able to put out that consistent damage of Psychic, which isn't an amazing type, but I, back in the olden days of when I was predominantly playing singles during Gen 7, I would always prefer to get teams with multiple Psychic types instead of just one. It was a similar thing with electric types, where the types have flaws associated with them, but they are often able to exploit teams which have, a missing... like, it's really easy to draft a team with, for example, Revavroom here as a steel type that is not a Psychic resist. And, to draft two fighting types, because in this format there were quite a number of good fighting types that different players could have access to. And that just meant that they weren't able to withstand the Psychic spam-based offense. Especially because my team isn't one, is one which has a lot of sort of fake fighting types, like the Barraskewda or the Skarmory, which can sort of disincentivize people from running Terra Dark somewhat. Not crazy amount, because it don't have a fairy type, but somewhat. So now back to the Titan with a typewriter. So back to the slideshow, I think I should say, because it's still the same video. So mental melding is awesome, but what I really went all in on when I was drafting this team was the tumultuous Typhoon. Just the absolute rush of water type offense, with 4 water types, all of which, 3 of which specifically have Swift Swim, so I do have the ability to take advantage of rain, even if I may not necessarily do so in this particular set. Multiple with Aqua Jet, and then Ludicolo and Swampert both providing really solid support, and I do also have that Intimidate there from Quillfish, as well as the Propeller Tail from Barraskewda, which means the Quillfish obviously can limit the, can maximize the amount of turns my own Pokemon are able to take. They can make it so that Barraskewda, despite being a fairly frail Pokemon, is able to take one stab hit from an opposing Pokemon if it's neutral, or even like a Trailblazer, some other lower base power coverage moves. if they're physical, and the Barraskewda does have Propeller Tail, which allows it to play around redirection, so just having all of this coalescing offense, especially with a type like Water, which is only resisted by opposing Water types, Grass and Dragon, and opposing Water types, I have enough Water types that I just beat your Water types. I think that's how the maths goes, but I do have the Ludicolo Grass moves there to be able to break through them, and both Grass and Dragon, the other two big resists to Water, are weak to Ice coverage, which I think all 4 of my Pokemon get, but Quillfish only gets specialized coverage and doesn't have great special attack, but it can use Poison to pressure Dragons and Grasses. So very sort of consistent damage from this team, as well as outside of Barraskewda, they all have access to Secondary Stab, which enables me to play around Water Absorb, which is obviously a pretty impactful ability. Now, to this match, which is on season against a player I do play in playoffs, but is on season against Jace. I want to say week 2 or 3. I don't remember my season well enough. No, I think week 3 was LS. So I think this might have been my week 2 game. And here's just the first game of the set, where I very much go into this water-based offense. As is not super surprising. Oh no, I do go for the fake out this turn. When I click Rain Dance, and my opponent, does click Weather Ball. It does click Rage Powder, which obviously Ludicolo ignores due to its access to due to it being Grass type. But the combination of Weather Ball and 2 moves is able to knock out both their first 2 Pokemon, only due to that Rain Boost, and is also able to consistently apply pressure here, where even as we're getting into the late game, my opponent is forced to push damage into the other slots, and then that Water and Ice coverage, like I mentioned, is really consistent. And then even here, I'm able to use the Terra to boost the power of this Choice Banded Barraskewda, and do real insane damage with Aqua Jet. I do only have Weather Ball as my water move on this set, otherwise you would have probably seen another water move coming out. But the amount of damage that Water type Pressure was able to put into, basically being responsible for completely for knocking out Venomoth, completely for knocking out Chimico, and doing a lot to the Dunsparce to be able to put me in range where I'm able to win off of it, is really good. It's really good. Even with the crazy Hyper Drills, which are able to ignore defense, and having a bulky 4x resist in Diplin, which I'm able to threaten with the Ice Beam, and then they become less of a resist to water, even if I didn't wind up being able to apply water pressure to them in that specific set. So let's give it up for the Tumultuous Typhoon. Definitely a very effective part of this team. I think a lot of the sets I looked at were ones which used water as an effective offensive typing, including some manual Rain Dance on my Sun team. But certainly not the only weather that I have, as we have the Welting Wildfire, Ninetales, to some extent Exeggutor, and to some extent Victreebel. I think both Victreebel didn't necessarily have the most amazing season, but the game that you saw here was definitely Victreebel's capstone in this set. And Ninetales is not the strongest Pokemon, but with access to Choice Specs, potentially with Terra, with Stab, with Drought, you can really push out real Pokemon damage numbers, even with that 81 special attack. It turns out having a boosting ability that gives you 1.5x damage is kind of good. So yeah, despite all the flaws of Ninetales, it can really prove effective. So this one is much crazier. This is my first game of finals. I did obviously spoil that I won the set of finals because I said at the start that I won, but I believe James's review should come out by the time I've done this. This is a team which you look at it and you're like, they have no fire resists, and then we sort of start and we get to this lead. We see the Terras, and we see, would you look at that? There are 2 fire resists. So obviously it feels pretty good for me here. So just with the turn 1, I go immediately for a Terra Fire. I'm not even clicking a fire move this turn, but it is just such a good defensive typing into the opposing Sleepmon. And I see their Terra Grass. I'm like, okay, well, they don't want to click Terra Grass against they don't want to click Terra Grass against Ninetales, and even against Victreebel, which they see as Terra Fire and could be Weather Balling. So I go for the Sleep Powder play here, and then just using the support from Victreebel, I'm able to Acid Spray, destroy a defensive Chimecho. I'm even able to get through this defensive Terra, as you'll see. So we're doing 67% here. I'm like, well, that sounds like that sounds like double that is going to be enough damage. We do see it's not a particularly effective Sneasel set within this specific context, in this specific matchup, but I'm able to get that Acid Spray off, and using that, beat through their specially defensive EVO Light resist with Terra, and do enough damage, and then they just wind up conceding to the power of my Fire-type offense here at this point of the game, because neither of the monsters were particularly well-suited to bring that out. So Ninetales effectively getting 4 KOs here at lead, just with the support of Acid Spray. Just a very, very fun Pokemon, and a really great game to sort of set the vibe for the playoffs finals. Now, yeah, Ninetales definitely got its due, and Victreebel finally had a game where it meaningfully contributed. Probably because I was clicking Acid Spray instead of trying to do attacks with it as well. Obviously, I went for the Terrafire to deal with the Sneasel's potential ice moves coming out, but not needed at all. So we come here to my real Solid type Pokemon. So Skuntank, it was in a number of sets. Unfortunately, it wasn't like amazing. I did have a Skarm replay where Skuntank was good into it, but I feel like the Piece de Resistance, the main set where you're like, wow, Skarmory is amazing, is actually the second game of finals. But I did have I think a week 2 game as well, week 3, not against Chase, against LS, which was also a contention, which did feature Skuntank as well. But Skarmory in a lower tier format is completely brutal. If you aren't running prep specifically to cover Skarmory, it will just win. It is crazy. So, I mean, even when I was at Team Preview with my partner, I'm like, okay, well, this is probably Final Gambit Lucario to beat Skarmory, which it turns out it was, when I saw the replay after, it didn't come after. Obviously, Gengar is, it can run Thunderbolt to threaten Skarmory, and then, they ran a physically offensive Dunsparce earlier, as we saw with that Life Orb Hyper Drill, but it does have access to Flamethrower and Thunderbolt to threaten Skarmory, and that's really about it. Chimecho, not great into Skarmory, Difflin, not great into Skarmory, and Skarmory having both the access to what is functionally a Fighting Stab in Body Press and the power of Drill Peck, and normal stab Flying Stab in general, really good. So what we see in this set is just by putting out the, not even crazy offensive pressure, but just some offensive pressure in the early game, as well as the defensive pressure of this incredible acupressure set. Unfortunately, I do get a speed boost, which is not as good in Trick Room, but if we ignore that, it's fine. So we see Skarmory come in, it switches in on an attack designed to pick up the other one, designed to pick up the Barraskewda. Leftovers immediately back to full. I have Sturdy. Even if they hit me with a big Thunderbolt, I'm not gonna die. I get the Drill Peck off. I've done 6% damage with my other Pokemon here, but I'm just able to consistently push out damage with this Skarmory. I'm just like, okay, well, I don't want them being able to cheese anything. I don't know what their last Pokemon is, but if it's Gengar, I'd like to be able to take it with my special defense investment. So Skarmory's able to just body press through that, and it's just not dying, right? Even if they knocked out my other Pokemon, I think it's possible I beat all 4 of these Pokemon by itself with Skarmory. Probably not because of the Diplin's growth, but Skarmory was just completely unless they brought out that Lucario, that Gengar, they had no way to deal with Skarmory, and we played a for fun game 3 set where they brought the Lucario and the Gengar, and then they were still not able to beat Skarmory. Though that was a little bit more RNG involved. Skarmory is a Pokemon with a very unique profile who can really, really swing sets in. Can really swing sets in lower tier formats, similar way to how Corviknight sometimes can in higher power formats. That defensive typing is incredibly consistent, and Body Press is such a good sort of pseudo stab that it was really fun. Ultimately, I'm incredibly pleased with my team this season. It's awesome to have finally gotten that crown, that championship for VGC Draft, and this is the custom Mega Skarmory from GPL, which is another league that coincidentally I also won, but that was a singles custom Mega League. Had a very fun season in there as well. Unfortunately, I did not have Mega Skarmory, though I did have Corviknight, which is pretty similar to Skarm in many ways, except for the ones that matter for singles, which I was playing in. Skarmory, Blessmon, Skuntank, it was okay. But Skarmory, I think I picked like round 3, very, very early for its price, and it absolutely was worth it all season. I thank you guys all so much for watching. I'm very happy to have finally won a season, and I'm glad to have shown that even if your team is just a bunch of Pokemon of the same type together, if you coordinate them offensively enough and you're able to use effective switches to your defense, as well as having a couple build-around options, that can win in a later game, like, you saw some of the Exeggutor sets, certainly like this Skarmory, then you too can win a VGC game. Or at the very least, you can make your Pokemon get kills. Thank you everyone for watching, goodbye.